if we're still looking at the Strait of Hormuz being closed or having a very low volume of traffic going through it, we could be back to a very tightening situation come September, October.
Welcome. The regional diesel price is trading at a 50% premium to that of Brent crude. Why is that the price we should be watching?
Well, two factors, because the actual crude that comes out of the Middle East is actually more suited to making diesel than it is for making petrol, because not all oil is the same. So that's one factor. The second factor as well is actually the refined capacity. There's been a squeeze on that. So those two together have contributed to seeing this regional diesel price trade at a much higher price than it ever has done before in the past.
And so this is the diesel price that Australia relies upon. Australia's economy heavily relies on diesel.
It's a much more important price than say the Brent price, which a lot of people refer to. And the reason being is that Australia, we consume more than 52% of all the fuel that we consume every day is diesel. And it also represents the biggest proportion of all the fuel that we import. Bearing in mind that we import about 90% of all the fuel that we use each day. And so of that 90%, the majority is diesel. So we are in fact the world's biggest diesel importer, even though we're not the world's biggest diesel consumer. But because we don't have a lot of our own refining capacity, that's why we are the biggest diesel importer. And that's why we're very sensitive to international diesel prices.
By how much has the global diesel market also tightened because of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict? Even though Australia doesn't source diesel directly from Russia, but there are implications still for us, aren't there, now that Russia has banned exports of diesel to other buyers?
Yeah, that's a really important point. Russia is the second largest diesel exporter in the world, so it accounts for about 10% of all the diesel that's traded. Yes, Australia does not buy any diesel directly from Russia, but it will now have to compete with the countries that have, and that's China, that's Brazil, it's Turkey. And the reason why Russia has stopped the export of its diesel is because Ukraine has been able to penetrate Russia much more deeply, and so it's actually knocked out a lot of the refining capacity that Russia has. So what that's doing is less diesel, but it's actually more Russian crude that's come onto the market.
What about here in Australia? Should we be reassured by the government's message that we in fact have more diesel supplies now than we did when the Iran war began?
Well, that is comforting, but I suppose relatively speaking, I mean, what we're really talking about is about 30 days of consumption, so that's really a month's worth. Now, if we were to measure that against the international benchmark, which is the guidance provided by the International Energy Agency, they advise their members, of which Australia is one, to hold 90 days. I guess one way of looking at it, even though we've had this major supply disruption from the Middle East, there's still over 75% of the world's oil still flowing. So it's going to take a long time before our stockpiles reach very, very low levels. So we can manage this for a while yet.
So you don't think that Australia is going to be at a pinch point for diesel anytime soon? Is it going to have to source or be more competitive in the way that it looks for diesel supplies in the coming months if India and China are also in the market?
Yeah, I see. Diesel, it's a very tricky thing to address because a lot of its use is in industry, for trucking industry, for instance, agriculture, and also the big mining equipment. And so while there is alternatives such as electric vehicles, electric mining equipment. That's still a very small market, and so it's going to take a number of years before we can actually start seeing diesel demand come down. So it's a very sticky demand, unlike, say, petrol, where we're seeing a surge in EV sales. So we're seeing a lot of substitution of petrol vehicles.
The average retail diesel price in recent weeks has been around the $2 mark. That will rise when the government's fuel excise discount comes off next week. How far could it rise if we don't start to see some positive movements in the geopolitical space?
Well, right now, there's two things. We've got some good news coming on, but there's probably more bad news than there is good news. And I'll just explain the good news first. The good news is there's been no exchange of fire between the US and Iran over the last 2 days. Furthermore, there's been discussions taking place between Oman and Iran. And the third thing is that all the vessels that were tied up in the Strait of Hormuz when it was closed from the end of February to mid-June, they're all starting to arrive at refineries across Asia. And they're all the countries that we import the oil products from, such as diesel. And so we should start to see a lift in some of the diesel imports and crude imports throughout August. But that's only going to, if we're still looking at the Strait of Hormuz being closed or having a very low volume of traffic going through it, we could be back to a very tightening situation come September, October.
Okay. Kevin Morrison, thank you.
Thank you.